Okay, everyone, thank you so much for attending this uh, workshop, this interactive workshop on non-binary. I just want to say I'm grateful that you've all joined us today, and I hope you enjoy what we have. It's just going to be a casual conversation, more or less, between myself and Sky. So we're joined by the fabulous Sky Byrne, who is the finance officer with the Rainbow Project, and they have kindly agreed to join us for this non-binary interactive Zoom event. And I just have a few questions that I am going to put to Sky, and just about what it means to be non-binary and different things around that. And Sky's going to answer those. So if questions arise during this conversation, feel free to jot them down and we can put them in the chat, or you can read them out to us uh, by unmuting your device at the end. So uh, is that enough of an introduction, Sky?
Yeah, I think so.
You happy
Um,
with that?
yeah, I'm excited. A little bit
Perfect.
nervous, but excited.
Great. Me too. And I don't think you ever really get used to being in front of a camera when it's recording. You,
No.
that probably takes years and maybe some training, but
Hmm.
we'll do our best here. The whole point of it is to end up with a product that we can use for the LGBT plus community in the end. So this evening we're exploring non-binary, and first question I have is what does the term non-binary mean? If you can,
Yeah, so the term non-binary means an identity that falls outside of the gender binary. So the gender binary is a model of gender that has two ends. So you've got man and woman. And a non-binary person sits either somewhere in the middle or not necessarily on any extreme end of that binary, or somewhere completely outside of that binary.
okay, thank you, Sky. And are non-binary people trans, or is that
Um,
different?
some non-binary people are trans. It really depends on how the non-binary person themselves wants to identify themselves. Um, Trans is a person who doesn't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. So using that definition, you could say that all non-binary people are trans, but a lot of non-binary people don't feel comfortable referring to themselves as trans. So it really depends. A lot of the answers to these questions will be, it completely depends on the non-binary person because there's such a range of experience in non-binary identities.
Yep, so it's just an individual experience, just depending on what the person
Yeah.
is going through and experiencing themselves.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so, just to clarify for people who are unfamiliar with the terminology here, cisgender then refers to a person who is happy with the gender they were assigned at birth.
Yeah, they feel comfortable in the gender that they were assigned in birth, and they don't want to make any amendments to that for now.
Okay, so cisgender people then would never have had to question their gender, so it might be difficult for them to understand uh,
Yeah.
someone questioning their gender because it's not something that they've ever experienced personally or came across, and because of our educational system it's not something that they maybe would have been aware of through school at all. So it could be something completely new and that they're not aware of until maybe a family member or a friend comes out as non-binary or trans, and that's the first time that they will have to have had to consider it. But for a lot of people, it's not on the radar.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, do, do non-binary people undergo surgery or take hormones?
Um, Again, there are no hard and fast rules for non-binary people. Some non-binary people do undergo surgery and take hormones, and it really just depends on how they experience their gender and how comfortable they feel in their body. Um, and their presentation. And so, like a non-binary person might want to get surgery but not take hormones, or the opposite way around. Um,
or
yeah, just more.
or just express themselves through clothes
Yeah,
and
they might choose to do neither of those, and just kind of dress themselves in whatever way they feel comfortable, or wear makeup, or um, yeah.
thank you, Sky. Next question is about bathroom, using a bathrooms and changing rooms. How do you decide which bathroom to use, and have you ever faced problems where that's been concerned as a non-binary person?
I think usually when I'm using the bathroom, I'm considering how safe I feel in the space I'm using the bathroom in, and how confident I feel in the way I'm presenting myself, I guess. Um, like there are times when I'm feeling really confident in the way that feeling really confident in my gender identity, and I'm kind of feeling very affirmed, and I feel like I've got a lot of resilience. And if I face some discrimination, I won't really care, or I'll be able to handle that and just kind of leave the bathroom and be okay. Um, so like my preference is to use the women's bathroom generally. But if I don't feel very safe, I'll use the men's bathroom, um, because I tend to get questioned less in the men's bathroom. Um, yeah,
Are men, would you say men would be more likely to challenge someone coming into the bathroom space if they were presenting more female
when
than
I've gone into the bathroom and I'm presenting female, um, because feel like I just didn't feel confident enough going into the women's bathroom. Um, men are most of the time they just kind of give you a weird look, or they'll tell you to leave. Um, I've never gotten any. I've never gotten any like harassment in the bathroom, but quite uncomfortable stares though are kind of a given. And my preference is to use an accessible bathroom or a non-gendered bathroom, but they're just generally not around.
thank you, Sky. Also, with trans people, we hear a lot about body dysphoria, and does that happen with non-binary people as well?
Yeah, not many people experience dysphoria. Um, Usually when they take hormones or they undergo surgery, it's to alleviate some of that body dysphoria, to make their body match how they feel about themselves a little bit more. Um, and sometimes it's dysphoria in kind of a perception way, like they it's sometimes hard for non-binary people to present themselves the way that they feel on the inside, on the outside, because there's no like model for what a non-binary person looks like. There's nothing for a non-binary person to really aspire to be. And like
Right,
it's,
there's nothing in
it's
popular
hard.
culture
Yeah,
really that.
right. And because it's such a vast such a vast range of identities and experiences, that there really isn't just one look or one way of being non-binary, and there isn't one way of being a man or one way of being a woman either. But society has a stereotype of what those things are.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of boxed it in a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
divided clothes into
Mm-hmm.
boxes, and I suppose that makes it difficult for non-binary people when they are to go shopping, etc. Even deciding what to put on in the morning when you've already bought the clothes, and you have to consider where you're going, how safe that's going to be, depending versus how you're presenting that day, etc. So it's complicated. It's not just as simple as jumping out of bed, throwing on what you had on yesterday, and running out to your event.
No, a lot of the time it's trying on a few different things and then putting makeup on and then taking it off and then putting it back on.
So a lot of considering other people's opinions of you.
Considering other people's opinions of you and considering how you feel about yourself that day. Um, because if you've got like a fluid identity, then it's hard to know sometimes where you're at.
Is there anywhere in the world, as far as you know, that you can have non-binary on your birth certificate or passport, or are we still not there yet?
We're not there yet, really. Um, like not completely. We're definitely not there in Ireland, or in the UK. Um, like there's conversation about it happening, but it's usually very dismissive, um, or it's like just breadcrumbs or something, you know. Like it's on the radar, but they don't really care about it. Um, uh, in in Australia, you can have an X marker, um, but it's not really that great because you can't be married if you have it.
You can't be married if you have it,
No.
right? So it's lip service
Hmm.
towards that because probably is it. Do we know how many non-binary people are in terms of population? Um,
Uh, that's really hard to say, um, because we've only just started recording non-binary identities,
right.
um, and we've only just started discussing non-binary identities. Um, yeah, I wouldn't be able to put like a comfortable number on that because
Yeah,
there
there
are
just isn't
so
that
many
information.
so many people who have slipped through the cracks, um, and like how can we know if we never ask?
Yeah, that's true. I suppose with trans people as well,
Hmm.
they're still only slightly ahead of non-binary in terms of a lot of things, but certainly changing birth certificates, etc., passports, still a bit of a nightmare.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, in terms of non-binary and having a family, if there was a non-binary couple got together, they had children, what would their children still call their parents mum and dad, or are there different terminology for non-binary people, or does it matter?
Well, it's completely up to the parents, and how they feel comfortable being described. Like a trans masculine non-binary person might feel comfortable being called dad, um, and a trans feminine non-binary person might feel comfortable being called mom, or the other way around. Um, and then some might not wanting to use gender language at all, so there are terms like baba, and BB, or just using parent. Um, and there is a few, like there's a bunch of them. Um, like there's Mada and Maddie, and Nibi, and Nini. Um, and I can put a link later to like a bunch of terms for family in the chat or something.
Great. Yes, that's really interesting. That would be
Mhm.
brilliant. We'll get a wee link for that and send that out. Um, so it's the same for someone who's non-binary, and if they have a niece or nephew, then it's really
Yeah.
just a personal um, label of what they prefer for family members to call them and
Yeah.
refer to them. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's just unique to that person.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about where the person's comfort is at. As I said earlier, and as I'll probably keep saying, it's such an individual experience being non-binary. Um, the only real way to know is to ask how they feel comfortable, and what they feel comfortable being referred to, and having the kind of, I guess, the confidence to ask somebody how they feel comfortable identifying, and knowing that it's okay to ask them that, and it'll probably make their life easier, as long as you do it respectfully and not in a very public space.
Yeah. So aside from the things that we've mentioned, like
Mm-hmm.
changing rooms, what are the other obstacles that non-binary people face in everyday life? Maybe things that cisgender people have never thought about. Are there
Mm-hmm.
any other situations that can cause anxiety or stress for you as a non-binary person?
I think like not knowing what spaces you're welcomed in, or what not knowing what spaces you welcome yourself in, um, and kind of being excluded from spaces. Like a lot of spaces are divided into men and women, um, and I don't feel comfortable really in either of those spaces. I just feel like I'm not supposed to be there because I'm not either of those things. I don't have I don't really have that experience, of being a man or a woman anymore. I mean, a few like years ago, I had the experience of being a young man, I guess, but I never really identified with that. Um, it was something I was feigning for a long time, but it was not true. Um, and I just don't feel comfortable in those spaces. So for a lot of it, it's like exclusion from society. Um,
Yeah,
I,
things that other people take for granted. For example, stag do and hen night,
Mhm.
and you could be excluded from those, or if you go along, it could be an uncomfortable experience.
Yeah, and like it'll be uncomfortable for me, and then it might also be uncomfortable for somebody else when I have to explain why I'm there to them because they think I shouldn't be there, you
Yeah.
know? And then I have to go through a whole spiel about what being not, I have to do this workshop with them, essentially.
Well, now you'll have a recording. You can just say,
Yeah.
Watch this."
In that corner, watch this.
This will answer your questions. But yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff, having to do a workshop with people before entering spaces and nights out and things.
And I
Pretty
think
heavy.
a lot of queer people have that experience, and a lot of LGBT people have that experience as well. Um, but yeah, that's been like gendered spaces is probably where I feel the most uncomfortable, and also people assuming what role I fit into, um, or what things I like or don't like, um, like people assuming because I'm non-binary, I don't like sports because they're considered to be masculine, and
Yeah.
non-binary people can't be masculine in a lot of people's eyes. There's a misconception that a lot of non-binary people are feminine, and it's not the case at all.
Um, if I, how would I know if I identified as non-binary? Are there certain telltale signs? Um, and does it happen from an early age?
And I think stuff like not feeling comfortable in gendered spaces and not identifying with how a lot of other boys or girls might describe themselves or their experience of being, um, a man or a woman.
So that could be as early as primary school.
But yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard for young non-binary people, um, like because we have those conversations and like with young trans people, and there's some sort of understanding in society that um kids can be trans and kids can change their gender, but I that conversation of um kids not having a gender or kids having both genders is just not one that's really happening right now. But absolutely, it can happen at a young age.
And also, it can take a while to figure things out. So it could be you could be into your 40s, 50s before,
Yeah, yeah. You can come
especially.
out at any age and you can figure out that you're a completely different gender than what you thought you'd been for your whole life at any age. And it doesn't make your gender identity any less valid.
Perfect. Sky, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. It's been brilliant. We're going to take some questions from participants, and I'm just going to stop the recording
Mhm.
to allow that to happen. Okay, so if you just bear with me, we'll stop the recording in 3, 2, 1.